Are you ready to delve into the fascinating world of the unknown? Today, we're going to explore a mystery that has intrigued mankind since time immemorial: UFOs. Leaked government documents have revealed a shocking incident. A UFO crashed in the Amazon, and what was inside is simply unbelievable. But that's not all. In this video, we'll also talk about some of the most impressive UFO sightings that have been reported around the world. We've all heard those crazy stories about aliens, and today we'll unravel the truth behind these phenomena. So if you like this kind of content, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Now let's get started. Number 1. UFO found in Virginia. In the early hours of January 13th, 1996, NORAD, which is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, detected something strange on their radar. Their job is normally to monitor things like enemy missiles or aircraft, but that day, something completely unexpected appeared. A mysterious object had entered the Earth's atmosphere near Sao Paulo, Brazil, but NORAD was unable to identify it. They immediately contacted the Brazilian military to alert them. The object was about 200 miles northeast of Sao Paulo and falling rapidly. Brazilian Air Defense asked for more details, but NORAD simply classified it as unidentified. It was not a satellite, missile, or anything they could explain. Within minutes, this mysterious object was hurtling toward the ground, eventually crashing near the town of Varginha, which would soon become the center of Brazil's most famous UFO story. Number 2. What was the mysterious object? When the object finally crashed, it didn't land quietly. People saw and heard something large falling, and it wasn't long before stories about a UFO began to circulate. People who saw the object said it was spewing white smoke and didn't seem to be flying very well, which probably explains why it crashed in the first place. A local woman, a farmer named Urina, was one of the first to see it. She said it flew over her farm, scaring her animals. Her husband, Ubirajara, also witnessed the strange craft and said it seemed to be struggling in the sky before disappearing over a nearby ridge. Another witness, a man named Carlos, was driving when he saw the object. He actually followed it until he saw it crash, and what he found at the site was no ordinary crash. It was scattered everywhere, and the air was filled with a strong, unpleasant smell, like ammonia or rotten eggs. Number 3. The crash site. As soon as the unidentified object crashed, military vehicles and soldiers quickly flooded the area, setting up a perimeter around the crash site to keep civilians out. By the time they arrived, some locals had already taken a good look at the wreckage. The wreckage was scattered everywhere, and Carlos even described picking up a piece of the craft that felt like super light aluminum. But what really freaked him out was that when he crumpled up the metal, it snapped back to its original shape as soon as he let go. Carlos wasn't the only one who noticed something strange, but before he could investigate further, the military showed up and told him to leave at gunpoint. They were very serious about keeping people away. Later, Carlos was approached by 2 men in black suits who basically told him to forget everything he saw. They knew where he lived, knew his family, and made it clear that talking about what he had witnessed would be a bad idea. Number 4. Aliens were sighted soon after the crash. People in Varginha started seeing really strange things, and it wasn't just about the UFO anymore. At 8 a.m. on the same day, reports started coming in about creatures that didn't look human. A college student claimed to have seen a small, oily-skinned creature crouching in an alley near a park. It was about 1.2 to 1.5 meters tall, with a large head, 3 long fingers, and no hair or clothes. People started to connect this to the crash, thinking that these beings could have come from whatever fell from the sky. Not long after, 3 girls, Lilian, Valkyria, and Katya, were walking through a vacant lot when they saw something even stranger. In the tall grass, they saw a creature that looked terrified. It had shiny brown skin, a large head with 3 protrusions on top, and huge red eyes. The girls froze in fear, but what was even stranger was that they could almost feel the creature's emotions. Number 5. Hospital staff witnessed unusual creatures. As rumors of the UFO crash spread, strange reports began to emerge from a local hospital in Varginha. According to hospital staff, military personnel unexpectedly arrived one day with strange patients in tow. These were no ordinary people. The beings were small, frail, and had strange physical features. Their skin was oily, and they had large heads with large red eyes, just like the creatures described by earlier witnesses. The hospital staff was told to clear the area and keep quiet about what they saw. Despite the secrecy, word quickly spread among staff that these creatures were not human. One nurse even claimed to have briefly seen the beings before being escorted out. Number 6. It was all too suspicious. One of the most suspicious aspects of the Varginha incident was the quick intervention of the Brazilian military. Witnesses reported seeing military personnel arriving almost immediately after the crash, blocking off the area and keeping civilians away. Trucks and helicopters were also seen, further fueling the idea that something big was going on. The Brazilian government dismissed claims of a UFO crash, saying there was no evidence of anything unusual. Officials also denied any reports of strange creatures, insisting that people had mistaken ordinary events for something extraordinary. They went so far as to suggest that the creatures people had seen were actually animals or a misidentified local man covered in mud. Despite these denials, the government's attempts to downplay the event only made people more suspicious. Many felt that the authorities were covering up the truth. The fact that the military had been so involved from the start made the official explanations seem even less credible. Number 7. The Colares Island Incident. The Colares Island UFO incident, also called the Flap of Colares, is one of Brazil's most mysterious UFO events. It all happened in 1977 on Colares Island in the state of Pará. For a few months, locals reported seeing strange, brightly illuminated objects in the sky, often casting light on them. But these weren't normal lights. Some claimed the beams caused burns, puncture wounds, and even drew blood from people, leaving them feeling like they had been irradiated by something radioactive. Scared for their safety, residents held nightly vigils, lit bonfires, and set off fireworks in an attempt to keep the UFOs away. The Brazilian Air Force even got involved, launching Operation Prato to investigate. However, after 2 months of investigation, they were unable to find any solid answers. Years later, Captain Urangue, who led the operation, spoke out about the strange events, but was mysteriously found dead shortly after. Some believe UFOs were involved, sparking all sorts of conspiracy theories. Number 8. UFO in Manaus. In 1974, in the capital of the state of Amazonas, Manaus, something really strange started to happen. During that year, many people reported seeing bright, colorful lights in the sky, and things got even stranger when those lights started to descend and hover over the city. Locals described the objects as disc-like objects that flashed in different colors and moved in ways that didn't seem normal. It wasn't just about seeing lights. Some people claimed to feel physical effects from the close encounters. There were stories of people feeling intense heat, anxiety, and even fear when UFOs were nearby. Some people even reported burn-like injuries, much like other famous UFO incidents in Brazil. But to this day, no one knows the real answer to what really happened. Number 9. Tic Tac UFO Encounter. During training exercises in 2015, these Navy pilots encountered something very unusual in the sky. This video is part of a series that the Pentagon later acknowledged as genuine. The footage shows a mysterious object flying at high speeds, performing maneuvers that seem impossible for any aircraft we know of. In the video, you can even hear the pilots clearly surprised, talking excitedly about what they are seeing. Fast forward to 2020, and the Pentagon decided to declassify the video along with others to clear up any confusion. They wanted to make it clear that these were real, unexplained events caught on camera, with no tricks or hoaxes. However, they stressed that the objects in these videos were still officially unidentified and did not provide any answers as to what they could be. Number 10. UFO sighting at O'Hare Airport. This incident took place on November 7, 2006 at around 4:15 p.m. at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. A group of about 12 United Airlines employees, including pilots and mechanics, sighted a strange, saucer-shaped metallic craft hovering silently above Gate C-17. This wasn't just a quick glance. This thing hung around for about 5 minutes, hovering at about 1,400 to 1,500 feet in the air. The employees described it as a dark grey object between 6 to 24 feet in diameter, and then it suddenly shot straight up into the sky, leaving a hole in the clouds, which they described as if someone had punched a hole in the sky. This cloud effect is known as a punched cloud. At first, the FAA dismissed it as just a weather phenomenon, but after some digging through a Freedom of Information Act request, it turned out that the FAA had talked about the sighting behind the scenes, but no serious investigation was conducted, and no one found any answers. Number 11. Kirtland Air Force Base, UFO sighting. The Kirtland Air Force Base UFO sighting occurred on November 4, 1957 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and is one of those strange events that people still talk about. It was around 10:45 p.m. when two Civil Aeronautics Administration controllers, R.M. Castor and E.G. Brink, saw something strange while working in the control tower. They noticed a white light moving across the airfield that seemed to maneuver in ways they weren't used to. The controllers grabbed their binoculars and saw an egg-shaped object about 15 to 20 feet tall with a white light on the bottom. This mysterious thing hovered near the control tower for about a minute, then headed east, climbing into the cloudy sky. Radar operators confirmed that they detected a target in the area, which also showed some strange high-speed movements. The Air Force investigated it as part of Project Blue Book, its UFO research program. Their conclusion was that it was probably just a small plane whose pilot mistakenly tried to land at Kirtland Air Force Base. But controllers were unconvinced, thinking that the Air Force's explanation did not match what they saw. Number 12. The Val Johnson Incident. It all happened in the early hours of August 27, 1979, when Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson was patrolling a quiet stretch of road near Stephen, Minnesota. Around 1:40 a.m., he noticed a bright light hovering above the ground in the distance. Curious, he drove toward it, but before he knew it, the light was hurtling toward him at an alarming speed. He described the light as blinding and painful, and then suddenly heard the sound of glass breaking. The next thing he knew, he was unconscious. Johnson woke up about 39 minutes later, dazed and confused, with a bump on his head and eyes that felt burn. His patrol car was a mess. The windshield was smashed, a headlight was broken, and the antennas bent at a sharp angle. Even stranger, both his watch and the car's clock had mysteriously stopped for exactly 14 minutes. The incident attracted UFO researchers, but no one could really explain what happened that night. While skeptics thought it might have been staged, Johnson stood by his story, clearly baffled by the whole experience. Number 13. The Tehran UFO Incident. It happened in the early morning of September 19, 1976, when people in Tehran saw a bright object in the sky. It wasn't just a few people, several civilians reported it. The Iranian Air Force sent two F-4 Phantom jets to investigate. The first jet that approached the object suddenly lost all its instruments and communication systems, forcing the pilot to retreat. As soon as they moved away, everything began to function normally again. A second jet, piloted by Major Parviz Jafari, also experienced problems when it managed to lock radar on the object, which was the size of a large airplane. Its systems also failed, even its weapon system shutting down when it tried to fire a missile. Jafari saw a smaller object leave the main one, approach his jet, then decelerate and land softly on the ground. The next day, a search found nothing. Number 14. The Allagash Abductions. The Allagash Abductions are a pretty crazy UFO story from August 1976. Four friends, Jim Weiner, Jack Weiner, Charles Foltz, and Tom Reed, were camping and canoeing in the remote Allagash region of Maine. Everything was going great until the evening of August 27th. While they were around the campfire, they saw a strange bright light in the sky. At first they thought it might be an aircraft, but as it got closer it was totally silent and moved in ways that didn't make sense. Then, things took a strange turn. The light hovered over them, and they suddenly lost track of time. Later, they recalled being taken aboard a spaceship where they saw humanoid beings and underwent what they described as medical examinations. Fast forward a few years, and the boys underwent hypnosis, which seemed to bring out even more details about their experience. Ufologist Raymond Fowler stepped in to investigate and even wrote a book about it, bringing the story to public light. Number 15. The Shag Harbor Incident. The Shag Harbor incident is a prominent UFO event in Canadian history. It occurred on the night of October 4th, 1967, in the small fishing village of Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia. At around 11:20 p.m., people in the area saw a bright object flying low over the harbor. It wasn't long before they heard a strange whistling sound, followed by a loud bang as the object crashed into the water. Local residents and police reacted quickly. Lori Wickens and her friends, who were driving on Highway 3, saw the object hit the water and thought it was a plane crash. They called the RCMP, who arrived on the scene within minutes. The RCMP quickly contacted the Rescue Coordination Centre in Halifax, but despite their efforts, the object began to sink and disappeared. Search teams from local fishing boats, the Coast Guard, and even the Canadian Navy explored the area, but no wreckage or survivors were found. Over the years, investigations continued, with some witnesses suggesting there may have been multiple objects involved and even some underwater activity. Number 16. The Voronezh Incident. The Voronezh UFO incident is a crazy story from September 27, 1989, when a group of children in Voronezh, Soviet Union, reported seeing something out of this world while playing soccer in a park. These children saw a strange pink glow in the sky. Out of nowhere, a deep red ball about 3 meters in diameter appeared, floated for a bit, and then disappeared and reappeared several times. Things got even stranger when the children claimed that a three-eyed alien dressed in bronze boots emerged from the object. There were also 2 other humanoid creatures with it, one taller than the other. The alleged alien landing left a circular burnt patch on the ground, and they also saw a small silver robot emerge from the UFO. The Soviet government took the report seriously and sent a scientific team to investigate. Initially, TASS News reported finding alien rock at the site, but it was later identified as hematite, a common mineral. They also detected some radiation, but it was downplayed as insignificant and similar to other post-Chernobyl findings. Number 17. The Travis Walton Abduction. The Travis Walton incident is one of the most talked about UFO abductions. It all happened on November 5, 1975 in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest near Heber, Arizona. Travis Walton was a 21-year-old forestry worker, and on that fateful night he was with his logging crew, led by his future brother-in-law, Mike Rogers. While on their way home, the crew saw a massive, glowing object hovering above the trees. Walton, being curious, got out of the truck to investigate. Suddenly, a bright beam of light hit him, lifted him up, and disappeared. Frightened, the crew fled, thinking Walton was lost. When they returned, there was no sign of him or the object. Walton was missing for 5 days before reappearing. He called his sister from a phone booth, saying he had no memory of where he had been. Over time, he recalled being aboard a spaceship and receiving some strange medical examinations from alien beings. His story exploded into the media, leading to his book, The Walton Experience, and a movie, Fire in the Sky. But there has been plenty of skepticism. Some say it was a hoax, and even Mike Rogers hinted at it, though he eventually retracted it. Number 18. The Belgian UFO Wave. The Belgian UFO Wave, or Belgian UFO Flap, was a major series of UFO sightings that affected Belgium from late 1989 to early 1990. It is memorable for the large number of reports, military involvement, and radar tracking. It all started on November 29, 1989, with sightings of triangle-shaped UFOs around Eupen. Witnesses described these massive, silent objects flying low and with bright lights below. Things really heated up during the night of March 30th, 31, 1990, when multiple reports of these strange lights came in. The Belgian Air Force even sent 2 F-16 jets to investigate. Radar at the Control Reporting Center at Glans tracked something, but the pilots were unable to see it, despite getting radar locks that turned out to be false. Over the course of the wave, around 2,000 sightings were reported by ordinary people, police, and military personnel. Number 19. The Hudson Valley Sightings. The Hudson Valley sightings were a major UFO event that took place from late 1982 through 1984 in New York and parts of Connecticut. It all began on New Year's Eve, 1982, when people in Kent Cliffs saw a huge V-shaped craft silently gliding across the sky. This was just the beginning of what would become a spate of UFO sightings in the region. From March 1983 through June 1984, Reports came in about huge triangle or boomerang-shaped objects the size of a football field. Witnesses described these crafts as having bright lights and moving slowly without making any sound. Over 9,000 sighting reports were recorded. Many of the witnesses were initially skeptical, but felt they had to share their experiences. Philip Imbrogno, a UFO researcher and author, dove deep into the case, interviewing witnesses and documenting their accounts. He even reported seeing the V-shaped craft himself. The sightings received a lot of local media attention, but most went unnoticed nationally. Number 20. The Cash Landrum Incident. On December 29, 1980, in southeastern Texas, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and their 7-year-old grandson Colby were driving through the woods near Dayton when they saw a bright, diamond-shaped object hovering above the trees. The sighting was so intense that Betty had to stop the car, and Vicki even got out to get a closer look. They reported feeling a rush of heat and seeing a blinding light, with Vicki feeling her face burning. Things got even stranger when they saw around 23 military helicopters, all Boeing CH-47 Chinooks, chasing the object. After the encounter, all 3 experienced serious health problems. Betty Cash was the hardest hit, suffering from blisters, nausea, and hair loss, which doctors compared to radiation poisoning. She was hospitalized shortly afterward. UFO researcher John Schuessler investigated the case, but despite physical evidence and witness accounts, official sources denied any involvement. Witnesses even sought legal action to cover their medical expenses, but their efforts were largely ignored. Number 21. The Rendlesham Forest Incident. The Rendlesham Forest Incident began in the early hours of December 26, 1980, near RAF Woodbridge and RAF Bentwaters in Suffolk, England. U.S. Air Force personnel stationed there saw some unusual lights in the sky above Rendlesham Forest. Curious, Sergeant John Burroughs and Airman Jim Peniston went to investigate and reported seeing a triangular craft with bright lights hovering among the trees. As they approached, Peniston claimed he got close enough to see that the craft was about 10 feet tall, covered in strange symbols, and made of a smooth material. The next morning, they found strange indentations in the forest floor and measured elevated levels of radiation. The action continued on December 27th when Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt led a larger team back into the forest. He recorded audio notes of his observations, including a pulsating light and beams of light through the trees. Despite Holt's detailed report and physical evidence, the British Ministry of Defence dismissed the incident. Number 22. The Phoenix Lights. On March 13, 1997, at around 8 p.m., people in Phoenix saw a huge V-shaped craft silently streaking across the sky. Descriptions said it was massive, about a mile wide, and had lights on its edges. Then, at around 10 p.m., people reported seeing a line of lights hovering and slowly descending behind the Sierra Estrella Mountains southwest of Phoenix. The U.S. Air Force later claimed that these lights were just flares dropped by A-10 Warthog aircraft during a training exercise at the Barry M. Goldwater Range, but this did not explain the earlier sighting of the huge V-shaped craft. Skeptics like James McGaha thought the first sighting might have been military aircraft from Operation Snowbird, a training program in Tucson. Number 23. The Air School Incident. During a mid-morning break, 62 children aged between 6 and 12 were playing outside their school when they saw something incredible. They reported seeing bright disc-shaped objects land in a nearby field, and some even claimed that strange beings dressed in black with large eyes emerged from the craft and approached them. The entire encounter lasted about 15 minutes, and when the children returned to class, they excitedly shared their story with their teachers. Unfortunately, many were ignored or not taken seriously. The story caught the attention of the media when local reports emerged, and BBC correspondent Tim Leach even visited the school, saying that he found the accounts hard to believe, especially compared to the war zones he had covered. Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John Mack, who was researching alien abductions, visited the school shortly afterwards. He interviewed the children and asked them to draw what they saw. Their drawings showed consistent details, such as beings with large black eyes and tight-fitting suits. Many children even reported receiving telepathic messages about environmental problems from these beings. Do you think there are aliens living out there that we don't know about? What if the government has already made contact with them? Thanks for watching the video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of the upcoming amazing videos. Thanks.